And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Right, attention and roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time, and of course 5:05 Pacific. Bright and early for me. Still dark outside. Grab your coffee, grab your donuts, and of course, we got a great show for you. We're going to sit down with Lieutenant Commander retired Vernon Geberth. Not Geberth, it's Geberth. And listen, I've already met him for a couple of minutes here. He's got a great personality. Let's get to meet him. He's got a great story. You're going to be pretty impressed. A hell of a resume. If you haven't heard of him, you probably did already. We already see a couple of friends on this podcast here. Tom Joyce already talks about an old friend. So let's get right into it. We're going to get into his book. But before we do that, in particular, tell us about your life as a child and why you joined the NYPD.
Well, I guess I had a desire to join the NYPD at a very early age. As a youngster, I think I was destined to serve. I was an altar boy, a lifeguard, a volunteer fireman. It's kind of interesting. I was even a bugle boy for the VFW. And I think in my entire youth, I was always in some sort of a uniform. So I guess I was destined to be in the NYPD uniform. Of all those jobs, I unloaded trucks at night. I was delivered for a drugstore. I was a newspaper boy. That was an interesting job, the newspaper boy. You have to pay for the papers. If they don't pay you, you're the one who's out of luck. So welcome to the wonderful world of business. But I caught on. And I guess of all those jobs I had, I have to be honest, I think the lifeguard job was the best. I couldn't believe I got paid for this. Walking around, strutting around the beach as a lifeguard, king of the beach. Actually, I met my wife on the beach, my childhood sweetheart, and we've been married 60 years. So, that was she got my six, believe me. If I didn't have the wife I have, I wouldn't be where I was. Everything I've done, she was behind me and helped me, even with the textbook. That's another story. So, and then all of a sudden, I decided I took the test. I didn't tell anybody in my family. I only told my girlfriend. So only two of us knew I was on the NYPD list. And I was in Iona College at the time, and I was taking business. And it was my junior year, and the brother who's in charge wanted to know if I had picked my practicum yet, the company that I would be studying with. I said, I already have my assignment, brother. He goes, what's that? I says, the NYPD. He goes, what? You becoming a what? You went to Iona College to become a cop? I says, yeah. You see that collar you got around your neck? That's a vocation, right? Well, this is my vocation. He went batshit. It was funny as hell. And I heard that we were going to be appointed that December. So we planned on getting married in October of 1964. And I would go into the police academy in December. And in the interim, I was picked up by the New York World's Fair Police Department. And the New York World's Fair Police Department was taking people from the list and training them to be World's Fair police officers. All the procedures were the same. Instead of saying UF 49, it would be WF 49. So we got some good training. But I had to laugh at these old-time bosses. Listen, kid, if you don't screw up over here, you might get the real job. It's okay. Whatever you say, sir. And so there I was. I went off to my honeymoon. We went to Bermuda. I came back. And I was laid off. I said, holy shit. I've had a job since I was 12 years old. I'm laid off. Well, World's Fair is closing for the season. It'll be back up. So I started scrambling. I was driving a cab, was driving a truck. You name the job. I have no ego when it comes to work. I'll shuffle shit, no problem. All of a sudden, my wife sees an ad for UPS. They're looking for part-time drivers for the Christmas season. So I showed up at Tuckahoe. You had to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, shape up. And it depends whether or not they know you if they pick you. So for 3 mornings, I was there at 5:45 waiting for some truck driver to pick me up. And, okay, we don't know you. Finally, I get picked up and the guy says, hey, you're a good worker. So now I had a steady job. Within 3 weeks, I had my own truck, my own route, and I was delivering package, but I wouldn't come back to the barn. That's what they call the garage. I wouldn't come back to the barn till every package was delivered. So sometimes I didn't get back until after midnight, and I had to be back the next day at 6 a.m. So good work ethic, train you for the police department. So at the end of the season, they're laying everybody off. They're keeping 5 people. I'm one of the 5. So this is great. When they found out I had 3 years of college, they're going to send me to UPS school down on 43rd Street in Manhattan. So I don't tell them that I'm on the list because I'm not dopey. And so I'm going to UPS manager school. And all of a sudden in February, the New York World's Fair calls and says, do you want to come back? We'll make you a sergeant. I said, oh, I'm going to be a sergeant. So I go back to the World's Fair and they put me in charge of liquor license inspection. And I didn't know anything about liquor license inspection, but I did find out is that there were more bars in those pavilions than you could shake a stick at. Because when the big shots came from across the world to the New York World's Fair, they would go to these special inside bars for dinner and for drinks, etc. And April 30th, 1965, I went down to the police headquarters and police academy. I was sworn in to the New York City Police Department and began my career.
No, I mean, listen, and then you had a hell of a career. I mean, you're absolutely, when we put this out on social media, you're considered a legend in the New York City Police Department. And I think throughout all of anyone who does homicide investigation, you literally wrote the book on how to perform a homicide investigation that's used to train numerous police academies, numerous homicide investigators, and numerous and then also federal law enforcement agencies as well.
Yeah, everybody uses the book. It's considered the Bible, not because I called it the Bible. I'm not arrogant enough to do that, but it's called the Bible.
Yeah, no, I get it, and that's why you have the nickname the Godfather of Homicide. So, Vernon, could you tell us how your career started? How'd that transition come over from the World's Fair Police to the NYPD, and what were you doing, and how was that?
The police academy, you know what the police academy's like, the physical and everything else. But I aced it. I had 3 years of college. I was laughing at. I was getting hundreds every week on the examinations. They started calling me, "Hey, college boy." Hey, college boy. I said, hey, listen, you can say what you want. Then one day, the lieutenant that's teaching the class, he says, "By the way, there'll be a term paper expected," and everybody's groaning and moaning, and I'm going, "Term paper, no big deal." So about towards the end of the program, I raised my hand one day and said, "Lieutenant, what do you want in this term paper?" Well, that started a shitstorm. "You son of a bitch, you reminded them." I says, "Hey, it's part of the protocol. It's the curriculum. You're going to have to do that." So the next phase was really funny. We had to go down for water safety and, the big pool in the police academy. And they separated those who could swim, those who could not swim. So I was in the group that could swim, obviously. And there's this big black instructor. I never saw anybody swim like a black guy swim like that in my life. Unbelievable. It looked like a marathon swimming. Went across the pool. "Okay," he said, "if we're going to have life saving, I need a volunteer." So my 3 antagonists that were pissed off at me about the term paper, pick Geberth. So he goes, "Who's Geberth?" I raised my hand. "Get in the pool, deep end. I'm going to grab you like a drowning victim. And when you go under, if you can't breathe, tap me 3 times. So I don't say nothing. He grabs me. I go into my lifeguard mode. I tuck him my chin, grab his arm, bring him under the water, turn him around, got him by the neck. He's tapping me like crazy. I come up to the, "Where the hell did you learn that?" I said, "I'm a lifeguard, sir." "Good, then you're my fellow instructor." I says, "Good, then let's pick those 3 MFs that volunteered me and I make sure they swallowed some water." And they did. And anyway, the bottom line was I got my assignment. I really wanted the TPF. I had heard about it. It's like the Green Berets of the police department. I want to be in that outfit. And the day of graduation, we got our collar brass. I come walking down. My wife had a twinkle in her eye. She goes, "Oh, my God, he got it." She was so proud of me. And I began my TPF career. And as soon as we were in TPF, we went for more training.
Okay? Vernon, can you just tell everybody what TPF is?
Yeah, the Tactical Patrol Force. We were a citywide mobilization group, worked the inner cities most of the time, but our job was crowd control. And back in 65, 66, we had the anti-Vietnam demonstrations. But more importantly, we had these riots. Almost every summer there was a riot. We used to call it the Summer Olympics. Here we go. And the mobilization of the Tactical Patrol Force was really, really neat. We would be on patrol with a box radio, and we'd be given assignments. And if there was a riot, we would get an alert on our radio. We would report to a certain street corner, and a big green, white, and black bus would pull up. We'd turn our nightsticks in. It'd give us axe handles. We get on the bus, and there'd be 2 cars in the front, 2 cars in the back with the lights and sirens, and we'd go into the riot area. And as we came into the riot area, the sirens would stop, just the lights, and we would have the axe handles on. Boom, boom, boom. It would psych these folks out, because when we pulled off the bus, we walked into these wedge formations, went into the crowd, got the troublemakers, bang, 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 and was all finished. We went back. So the mobilization was kind of neat. It was kind of a gun-ho thing.
Let me tell you, you got a super impressive resume. We even have some comments here. Some people saying you're a legend. The new cops need to listen to you to learn about investigations. Before we had all this technology, you were a worker. You were at World's Fair PD. You made sergeant. You were a lifeguard. You got an array of versatility. So of course you're in TPF. So after TPF, what was your next assignment? Of course, now you already have all this experience of leadership, lifeguards. At this point in TPF, what did you see going forward? What was your next assignment, and what were your aspirations? What assignment did you want to get into?
I wanted to be a detective. We all wanted to be detectives, and TPF was a legitimate route, because for the first time, the police department came up with a legitimate reason to be promoted. It was called performance. What a great idea. You perform, you'll get promoted. It doesn't happen anymore. Anyway, certain people from TPF were picked out to go into a unit that was called the Manhattan North Nighttime Task Force. It was like a citywide anti-crime. And within those 30 days, me and my partner made 20 felony arrests for guns, robbery. And on March 5th, 1968, we reported to the Detective Bureau. We were going to be detectives. So me and my dopey partner were there with 3 others. The other 3 guys were the sons or nephews of police chiefs who put them into TPF, so knew that was a career path. So we show up and they tell us, okay, young man, you're going to be assigned to the safe loafing truck. I said, safe loafing truck? That's a big outfit. Yeah, well, that was safe loafing truck for them. For us, we had a bullshit assignment. They just put us into a manpower thing to cover the Cuban ambassador to the United States. What a waste of time. Every day, watch this idiot, okay, and sit on York Avenue in Manhattan, smell the dog piss, and sit in the car. And the guy went no place. He was a real jackass. So what we did is we made believe we were taking his picture and acting like CIA agents, hoping they'd make a complaint to the State Department and throw us off to detail. No such luck.
Was this an assignment particularly for rookies? Was this?
It was a detective assignment, but the detectives didn't want it, so they put us into this special unit.
Understood.
Yeah, and then they said, okay, we don't have enough people in this unit. Put them into narcotics because they have more bodies. But we still weren't going to narcotics. We went to Cuban ambassador. Anyway, the next batch of detectives came in from TPF, and I ended up in Bronx Narcotics and had a good run in Bronx Narcotics. Really great cases, major cases, made over 100 felony arrests. Got a couple of commendations, a couple of shootouts, got the bad guys, made a bribery arrest, for $1,000. That summer, I got 3 letters of commendation from the Bronx District Attorney's Office. That was a big deal, 3 letters. However, one morning coming back from court, we got into a road rage incident with some idiot stopped at a traffic light. I don't know if he was drunk or what he was doing. We blew the horn, right? He jumps out of the car with a knife. He's waving a knife at us. Me and my partner pulled our guns. Say, you want to go to a knife fight? I got a gun. Next thing you know, he takes off. Oh, I'm too tired. We've been up for 26 hours. So we said, let him go. We go back to narcotics and tell the captain what happened. So next thing you know, we get a phone call from the 48th precinct. He's there with a representative and a witness. They want to make charges. I said, oh, yeah, hold on. He's under arrest. So I went back and locked him up, and then the fun began. He was represented by a big Latino politician. The witness was a Black Panther's wife or girlfriend. She was a troublemaking bitch. And it was, next thing I know, we're getting called down to CCRB GO15. So we go down GO15. I have a representative. I tell the story. We have nothing to hide. The captain's a real nasty bastard. He's looking for a piece of flesh. He turns around and he says to me, listen, kid, you can help yourself out if you tell the truth. I said, you fucking kidding me, Captain? That's what I do to perps. He went batshit. He started screaming and yelling. The union guy goes, get us out. Went back to my command. My captain told me, do not do any more interviews. That captain's out to get you. I said, okay. Next thing I know, I'm in court. District attorney comes up to me and says, "Hey, Vernon, there's a heavy complaint against you. I've been assigned to investigate." I said, "I didn't do anything." He said, "Well, are you willing to talk to me without an attorney?" I said, "Absolutely. I didn't do anything." So I tell him what happened. He goes, "Wow, that's not what the police department sent us. I had to testify before the grand jury. That's a scary feeling. Had to waive immunity, go before the grand jury, and we got a no true bill because we didn't do anything wrong. By the time I got back to my command, I had a telephone transfer, an out of borough transfer to Harlem, 26th precinct, to punish me." So, well, this captain's really a nasty bastard. He really wants me. Well, I ended up in 2-6 squad. I was busy in the 2-6 squad when all of a sudden they came up with something called the Taxi Truck Surveillance Unit. It was the forerunner of anti-crime. I loved it. We worked out of Flushing in the old World's Fairgrounds. We had unmarked cars. We locked up people left and right. When I was in Brooklyn, I had a partner, a black partner was Brooklyn. He took the Brooklyn arrests. I took the Bronx arrests. Everything was copacetic, and we were locking people up left and right. And a couple of major incidents, another couple of commendations, back here, back and forth. It's now December. The chief comes out, the newspaper, the chief. I'm number 69 on the sergeant's list. I'm at the top of the list. I'm going to get promoted. Everybody's congratulating me, pat me on my back. The teletype comes out. My name's not on there. I went to my boss, the captain, my name's not here. He says, "Let me check it out." He calls downtown. He says, "No, that captain says you have an outstanding CCRB, the round robin. You didn't pass it. You're not getting promoted." I was sick to my stomach. We just had our third child. We could use the extra money. I said, here I put myself in harm's way for the police department, took all these risks, right? And now I'm going to be punished. So I sent back to the 2-6 squad. And in January, they had the major police strike from January, whatever, the dates in 1971. The cops went on strike. The detectives had to work in uniform. So here I am working in uniform as a detective. I should be a sergeant. And well, it is what it is, I guess. Anyway,
Vernon, we got a Deputy Chief Rob Lukash. He says, "Looking forward to a great interview today. I worked with Vernon's son in the NSU 9, learned a lot from him." So that's Rob Lukash.
That's very nice, Chief. Thank you so much. My son was a good detective. He didn't want to be a boss. He wanted to be a detective, a homicide detective, and he was. And sadly, it's a strange job. But my name, is like toxic to some people. And he should have been at least a second or first grade detective. But every time his name came up, they saw Geberth. So I managed to piss off a couple of high-ranking people during my career. But listen, it was forgotten country.
That means you were doing your job. Believe me, having the title most complained cop, I know the feeling. But you were doing your job out there, and that's why. Outstanding. Listen, your resume is so impressive, and I love the fact that you came full circle, going back to World's Fairground. That's outstanding.
Yeah, that was ironic. And then, of course, I did very good there. And I went to the robbery squad. And at the time I went to the robbery squad, the Black Liberation Army had begun their assassination. So I did a lot of work on the BLA and the Black Panthers. And again, full circle, back to Columbia University, these dopey girls that fell in love with these radicals because they want to be bad girls. They were given safe haven to these scum. And so we were hitting apartments and we were getting complaints, civilian complaints, because they were college students and were doing bad stuff to college students. No, you're a perp. You should be in jail along with your boyfriend. But anyway, no problem. I'm at court one day, all right, down Manhattan. Now, back in 71, detectives didn't get overtime when they went to court. They got time back. But next day is my birthday. My wife's going to make me a nice supper. We're going to have a nice little family dinner. I'm at the corner of the red light on Mulberry and Canal Street. I look out the window and I see two guys pulling somebody into a car like a kidnapping. I said, holy shit, it's a hit, because I'm in Little Italy. I try to get the traffic cops' attention by blowing the horn. Beep, beep, beep. All I'm doing is bringing attention to myself. These guys look at me. Next thing I know, I'm chasing them. We're in a car chase through the streets of Little Italy. And I have a siren in my car because it's like a burglar alarm system. So I activate it. So now they think I'm an on-duty detective. I fire a shot in the air and I point at the car like I'm going to shoot them, right? I pull up alongside. I show
my procedure?
I pull up, show the shield. They take off even faster. Now we're going the wrong way down one-way streets, 50 miles an hour in Little Italy. And I'm chasing him. I'm going, Jesus Christ, you must be out of your mind. You already got passed by for sergeant. You fired a shot. You're, but the adrenaline's going 100%. I'm going to get these motherfuckers, all right? I'm going to get them. Anyway, I drive their car up on the curb at Kenmore Street. The driver comes out. He's got a gun. I shoot him. He goes down. I lose peripheral vision because I can't see what's going on the right side of the car. But another guy gets out. A big guy gets out. He starts running down the street. So I start chasing. I said, I'm going to have to shoot him. He's too big. A woman in a baby carriage, come on, I go out like this. I tackle him. Next thing I hear, please don't move. I thought I was surrounded by gangsters. They were all off-duty cops. I was right behind headquarters. I forgot where I was. That's how crazy it was. Now I have everybody respond. I got bosses, chiefs, everybody coming there. Go back and look for the guy I shot. He's gone. He was in front of a plate glass window. So if I missed, there would have been a hole in the window. Later on, detectives find out he was picked up and brought into a social club to hide him. All right, so I got this guy under arrest. I go back. I see this guy brushing himself off. He turns out to be a diamond merchant. It was a heist, okay? $100,000 worth of diamonds. I recovered it. Now we go to the 5th precinct, and the guy says, this is my entire stock. Detective, I don't know what. I says, listen, it's going to be all right. I call up the Rackets Bureau. I tell him, listen, I talk to the chief of the Rackets Bureau. This is what I got. Can we just take a picture of the diamonds and we'll hold one for evidence? He says, that's a good idea, detective. You could do that. All right. We get to court. We find out that he got a threatening call at home from the mafia, dropped the complaint. So I tell the district attorney, he said, it's no problem. He's got a mob lawyer. Let me explain something to them. Hey, listen, pal, any more complaints, no bail. All right, so that's taken care of. I forget about it. Everything's good. Oh, big write-ups and all. Put him in for a medal. I should have got the Medal of Valor for that. Well, honorable mentions, I got a commendation. Why? Because Manhattan South thought because I was a robbery detective, I had inside information, I was a cowboy. Plus, you got that CCRB complaint over you from that captain in the Bronx. So I get screwed. I said, I can't believe this shit.
Wait a minute, CCRB? We got a lot in common over here.
Yeah, except it was cops that ran it at that time. It wasn't civilians. That was prior to the Giuliani era.
Yeah.
Vernon, so could you, 2 questions for you. Could you walk us through what that shooting experience was like for you after? Like what job did they remove your firearm? What you modified? Like how that investigation by the job take place? Like where you were there, a change in duty status? And my other question, because you brought up the mob, what was corruption like in the NYPD at that time in New York City?
Well, corruption was pretty rampant at the time. It was systemic. Me being a TPF cop, I was removed from that. The bottom line with that shooting is, I mean, there's another part of that story. The other part of the story is that about 6 months later, I get called to the Rackets Bureau. I'm under investigation because the charges were dismissed. They thought that I made a deal. I said I was never notified to go to court, and neither was the complainant because I'm in touch with him. It turned out that a mob judge scheduled a hearing without notifying us, dismissed the charges, and now he's out. I'm in. They're looking at me. I said, "You're looking at the wrong guy. Here's my notes. This is what." But they says, "Oh my God, we know that judge." They re-indicted him. I got a big letter from Frank Hogan thanking me and all this other good shit. Bottom line is that at one point I was under investigation. Now let's go forward 6 months. I'm now a sergeant. All right, I'm up in homicide. I get a call from one of my buddies in intelligence. He says, "Hey, Vernon, remember that guy you were chasing in the car back in Little Italy?" I says, "Yeah." I said, "You know who you were chasing?" I said, "No." He says, "John Gotti. He just came over the wire." He says, "Freaking maniac in his own car chasing me through the streets of Little Italy." I didn't even know that. It's just a small world. It really is. And then shortly after, I had to go to the trial room. Finally, I'm going to the trial room in May of 71. Okay. And there's the captain, the son of a bitch. The shit that he's saying at the trial is terrible. However, I got a big smile on my face because who's there as my defense witness but the district attorney from the Bronx who's going to testify on my behalf. When the trial commissioner found out what this guy did to me, he chastised him in front of everybody, read my record into the court record, right? And I was exonerated. Now I'm waiting to get promoted to sergeant. In that summer, I got promoted to sergeant. That's another funny story.
You know what's interesting, Vernon, is that you talk about all the stuff you do, and you did so much that you even just glazed over the fact that you were assigned to homicide. So, can you bring us to that? This is a pinnacle point, right? Your homicide career is really what made you a legend. So, what made you want to be in homicide, and how did you get there?
All right, that's a little difficult because you just don't go to homicide. Okay, first you have to be a patrol sergeant. So the good part was I got back to TPF as a patrol sergeant. I was active as hell. I kept changing drivers, making arrests. I got assigned to a special investigation unit, narcotics, OCCB, because you couldn't go back to being a detective if you were a detective under the Murphy era. So now I'm in OCCB. We worked a major organized crime case. It was a 1.5-year case. It involved all 5 families. It was the biggest roundup that had ever taken place with the mafia. 86 defendants were picked up in April of 71, and it was tremendous. I had 29 wiretaps and 3 bugs. So busy, I couldn't study for the lieutenant's test, but I got detective sergeant out of it, Sergeant SDS. Now I'm Sergeant SDS, and I want to go to homicide, but I got to go to Manhattan North Narcotics first. All right, Manhattan North Narcotics, all kinds of stuff. Big cases. I put them in the book. Some are really funny, like Operation Octopus with all the tentacles and back and forth. During that time, I made another bribery arrest, but the bribery arrest was big because this was a mafia bribery. You mentioned about corruption. All right, so I'm talking to this guy with my 2 detectives, and all of us are trained people on the mob, and we're talking to them the way they like to be talked to. They make us an offer, $2,500, get the Secret Service off our back, the counterfeit money. Okay. I said, I got to do something first. I go up to get wired, all right, for the transaction. It's going to be me and my 2 detectives. The dildo lieutenant, okay, that's there. He's like Malcolm Powers in Heartbreak Ridge. You remember Heartbreak Ridge? He wanted to taste the thrill of investigation. He's from headquarters. He says, there'll be, no bribery unless I participate. He had heard something about a bribery review board. I could care less about a bribery review board. He cuts the detectives out, puts himself in, and he almost blows it. During the negotiations, he says to these mobsters, gentlemen, what kind of nefarious deal are we proposing? I look at him like the 2 mobs' eyes. I says, shut up, you fucking jerk. Thank God his mouth shut. The deal went down. Okay, so he disappears. We got a lot of work to do. We got all kinds of evidence and things. He's running back to write himself up. He must tell everybody in headquarters how he was bribed. So later on, when there was a investigation, I have to go down to see this inspector, and they want to congratulate me for making a bribery, which I did all my life. And he says, congratulations, Sergeant. I said, well, you know something, that report you have there, Inspector, is bogus. What? You know what you're saying? I said, I know exactly what I'm saying. I says, that lieutenant cut 2 detectives out that were in that bribery. They're the ones who should be down here. So, next thing I know, the dildo gets called down to be interviewed. He comes back, he's red in the face. He's all, what did you tell the inspector? I said, I told him the truth. And by the way, don't fuck with me because I'll call up the inspector. It was so funny. That's how I got transferred to homicide. That's what I asked for, because you're allowed to ask for something. I just want to go to homicide. So I got into the 7th homicide, which was the busiest zone in the city, 225 homicides a year in a 6.5 square mile area. And boy, that was the place to learn. But I was smart enough not to tell the homicide detectives what to do. You know why? Because I didn't know what to do.
All right, that's a great point. Could you just tell us how many detectives you had working for you at that time, and how you transitioned into really becoming one of the world's experts on homicide? You step into homicide, you didn't know what to do. You're gonna be led by the people that you have. You're gonna rely on the people that know more than you. Could you talk us through that transition?
Absolutely. Having been a detective and a detective sergeant, you get to meet a lot of people. You know the characters. I used to tell people in class, there's 3 types of cops: really good cops, mediocre cops, and screwed up cops. Okay. Now, how do you know who they are? Well, you ask everybody pick a partner, right? The person who's left over is the screw up. Right? Nobody wants him. I picked who I thought were the best. I said, listen, I'm going to be hanging with you guys. All right. I want to watch what you do. All right. Oh, boss, give us a break. I said, you don't get it. I want to learn. I don't know what you're doing. And I'm doing notes. On my days off, I'd go to the library. We didn't have Google. We had the index cards. I would pick everything up on homicide, forensic, nothing much on forensics. And I would get these books and I would get the books. Then I'd go back and look at the cases that were solved. Then when we had a success, I'd have a team meeting and we would share the information. Those notes was my checklist and field guide, became the nucleus of my textbook. That was how I developed the textbook. Now, in the meantime, I had gotten a master's degree. Okay. And so basically is a professional studies, which allowed me to teach college. I taught college for a year, but I kept missing classes because of all the homicides. So I said, I have to stop teaching. But there was the books I had to use were all written by academics. Academics are not practitioners. So I said, but I saw the design of the book as, I'm going to design my homicide book in a chronological fashion, starting with the first responder, the first detective, the first supervisor. And that became the book. Now I'm going crazy. Every day off, I'm going to meet all the ologists, serologists, anthropologists, odontologists, all the ologists, and I'm asking for their papers. And I review their papers, and I would rewrite it and give it to them. Is this what you do? Well, you're making it look too easy. Well, we don't want to do it. I just want to explain it to other people how it's done. And that became the book. And I began to put the book together. And what happened is I got a call from Charles C. Thomas Company because I was writing articles for Law and Order magazine. And they wanted me to redo their books. Oh, that's great. But in the interim, I got called to the FBI Academy because I was going there as a student. And I was going there because I had all these expertise. And while at the FBI Academy, I was trying some of my stuff on these different groups, and they loved it. Next thing you know, the FBI is debriefing me about homicide investigation, how you do it, what do you do, how do you do this, how do you do that. I come back, and the first thing I know, I'm being asked to be an instructor for the FBI, for the police officers in the surrounding communities. Then I get to teach at the New York City Police Department's homicide school, which was a big deal. That was a tough audience. You want a tough audience? Get in front of a group of 200 NYPD detectives who are looking at you like, who the hell are you to teach me homicide? And I'm saying, I'm nobody. This is what I got. All right. Well, I went from 1 hour to 4 hours and I became the lead instructor. I ended up teaching the homicide school for 29 years till Ray Kelly threw me out because I criticized the Heath Ledger case, the way they handled it. So anyway, I write the book. That's what you're getting at, right, John? I write the book, and I'm really proud. This is fantastic. The first book written in 20 years on homicide by a New York City detective sergeant. People gave me stuff from all over the country. Before I wrote the book, I requested to use official photographs from the NYPD, which I thought they'd love because that would give them, exposure. Oh, no. Somebody turned around and said, oh, no, he's trying to profit off a city product. And they said, no. I said, no problem. I got my own pictures. I have my own pictures. They didn't know that. The book comes out, and there's a big headline. The cop who wrote the book on murder. All right? This is wonderful. What a great, right? Next thing I know, I get a call from this captain, Internal Affairs. He says, congratulations, Sergeant. I see you wrote a textbook. I said, yes, sir. Well, you're under investigation. I was, what? Under investigation? Yes, you violated the police department's protocol on official photographs. I said, I use official photograph. Well, truth of the matter is, I found out later from one of the PAAs that this eunuch was ordering every crime scene picture from the 600 homicides that I went to. That's a lot of pictures. And he's trying to compare the pictures from the crime scene to the pictures of the book. It's not going to happen because those aren't the pictures. Meanwhile, the police commissioner was congratulated me for writing the book, right? There was a big to-do. I gave him a copy of the book, and now I get a call from this IAD captain. He's very frustrated. He says, what's the difference between official and unofficial? I see, read chapter 6, you frickin' moron. Hung up. I beat him. No good deed goes unpunished. What can I tell you?
Vernon, this is fantastic. And first of all, I'd love to call you Lieutenant Commander because you deserve it. You earned it. With that being said, it's so interesting how you self-read. You had so much passion that you're going out and getting books, going to the library. You're really diving in because you wanted to explore and really signify homicide. So it's so interesting that you're doing all this work and you're creating your own notes. So what was it about the elements that you created in comparison to what was in place before in homicide? What was the ingredients that you had that made it so prolific and what made you a legend and for your homicide course? What were the ingredients that you added to it?
I think the main ingredient was forensics, because everybody was satisfied with a confession. I said, you need more than a confession. I said, I want some physical evidence, okay? And it was funny because I got a little bit of resistance early on, especially from some of the crime scene people, because it was extra work. So I came up with, I think, listen, I'll tell you what I want you to do. I want you to use luminol over here, see if we can pick up any trace. Can't do that, boss. Why not? It's carcinogenic. I says, can you spell it? If you can spell it, you don't have to use it. That started, it was funny as shit, because next thing you know, they began to catch on. And as we got evidence and different cases we were doing, everybody kind of jumped on board. It was great. Meanwhile, I was getting exposure to cases outside of New York from people who invited me to teach, and they would share what they had. I'd bring it back to New York. So it was a passion. It was a passion. It was a full-time job because I really believed in it. And, the homicide zones across the city were doing a great job. And then one day somebody decided we don't need specialization. Let's go back to the community, local police. That was a big mistake, because within a year, we had 100,000 robberies with a 3% clearance. Homicides were down. The only operation that was functioning was the sex crimes unit. Okay, and nobody touched that because they didn't want to get the females mad about getting rid of the sex crimes. We had to go back, and we went back to the homicide task force. The robbery enhancement unit was basically specialization came back. And all of a sudden, I'm a squad commander in the 5-0 squad because I was a detective sergeant with homicide, so I get a command. And it just continued from the 5-0. We had some great cases. Every case I took, I put my full capacity to it. I made sure that everybody in the squad was working as one unit, because when I got there were 3 teams. They acted like there were 3 separate people. I said, no, we're all in one boat here. We're all working together. When the phone rings, if it's not your case, you pick it up. It's your case, all right? Because we're the 5-0 squad. We're not like the separate units. And I got some great cases. A couple of my cases went national. I had the guy who fed his face to the dogs. Okay, that was a wild case. I did the full forensics on that. And next thing I know, this guy, Thomas Harris, rips it off and puts it into the movie Hannibal. It's based on my case in the Bronx. I said, it's pretty good. So I wrote him a note. I said, I thought you're supposed to cite your sources there, Mr. Harris. He sent me back, oh, that's an error. From now on, I'll cite you. Bullshit. So I had later on, I got a few more credentials. I got a second master's degree, and I became a fellow in the American Academy of Forensic Science. I got a bunch of letters after my name says I'm smart, but I'm the same son of a bitch who was 50 years ago. I never let higher education affect my morals or my character or my personality. And here I am at the American Academy of Forensic Science presenting this case, the man who fed his face to the dogs. It was great. So little things like that.
So Vernon, when you got to homicide, was there set standards and practices for how to investigate a homicide? Would you say that the job adopted a lot of the policies that you wrote in your book and that you and your guys started to use? Like how much of your textbook has now influenced what homicide detectives do today?
Oh, I know it did, because a certain boss, well, I won't mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him, took my checklist and redid it as a department checklist. But he was so interested in checklists, he missed the big picture. You can't be anal in this business.
We know who you're talking about.
You can't.
Not hard to figure out.
You have to be able to think outside the box. What was going on before is individual detectives had their own style, and it was a good style, but it wasn't shared. Okay, because if I tell John or I tell Jim what I know, they'll be as smart as me. And I said, if you were that smart, you wouldn't be in the police department. All right, we're supposed to share this information. So basically, what happened is my protocols became the department's protocols, and I was the lead instructor for that homicide course every time. And I had those "We Work for God" signs. Anybody answered a question got a sign. It was kind of a gimmick to get people involved, and I left a mark. Even after I retired, I still did the homicide school because I believe in giving back. And because if it wasn't for the NYPD, I wouldn't be this person I am today. I know that. So it's not the jackasses of the job. It's the camaraderie and what you learn from each other during the process. So I would say that I did change a lot of things in my protocols. And of course, people got the textbook. The checklist and field guide is used by a lot of the officers and detectives. And God bless them. Because it's not you who's solving the case. They're solving the case. All I'm doing is providing them tools and ideas and instructions.
You know what's amazing, Vernon, right? I think homicide is such a special unit, right? But first of all, I just want to go back and say your record is impressive. So while you're creating all these ingredients to make homicide so effective of what it is now, reflective of you, you're also maintaining higher education. You got a second master's degree. I think it's so impressive that you're balancing both at the same time. It really enhances your education to enhance your job and to enhance your expertise. So with that being said, we all watch cop shows, right? And, being cops ourselves, we still watch cop shows.
Yeah,
and
it's entertaining.
It's entertaining. And I remember I used to love to watch the ID channel. I don't know if you watch the ID channel or not, but there was always homicide detectives or lieutenants in homicide. And there were cases that would always be significant that they would remember in retirement or something significant. I remember one of the cases I watched ID channel. There was a detective investigating the case, and he promised the family that he would not shave his beard until the case was solved. And he ended up having this long, crazy hair. They took a picture with him until he finally solved that case. So are there any cases that are significant like that to you that kept you up at night and that you still remember to this day? Is there one or some significant cases that really stick out about the
I gotta be honest.
I'd love to hear about it.
There's too many cases, but there's one case that really stands out. And the reason it stands out is because it was a forensic case in which this guy staged the scene. I was one of the first people to talk about staged crime scenes. And what happened is this character who was on the list to become one of the three departments, transit, housing, city, was involved in domestic. He had a girlfriend and he decides to kill his wife. And he kills his wife in front of the children. Well, the one child was 4 years old. The other child wasn't present. And he stages the scene that she committed suicide. She had been given medication for postpartum depression. And there's an empty bottle next to the tub, and she was supposedly in the tub. He pulls her out of the tub, and he calls, but he doesn't call. He has his brother call. So he's not on 9/11 because he knows we analyze 9/11 calls, which is an important thing. And he has brother calls to report that his brother's wife has committed suicide. He needs help. So everything responds. And at this time, I had just basically come to the 5-0 squad, and I had put out a directive. I want a detective at every unattended death scene. Okay, I don't want to get a notification later that the one that you didn't go to was a homicide. I want a detective there. I want you to do an analysis and make your determination. So there's no detectives on duty. There was one guy. He was a recalcitrant son of a bitch. He didn't like anything I did, and so the call comes in from the patrol sergeant because the word was out. You want a detective. So the patrol sergeant, another guy with 27 years on the job, he goes, Bill, are you going to come out? And Bill with 25 years job, nah, I'm going to have to come out because got this new pain in the ass. I can hear this conversation as this guy doesn't know who I am. Call me a pain in the ass. I'm like a Roman candle. It takes me a while to warm up, but once I warm up, all those balls have got to get out. So, but watch out. So I said, what happened? Some freaking broad drowned herself in the tub. I said, what? A woman drowned herself in the tub? I'm going to go with you. Nah, don't bother. It's all bullshit. I said, oh, yeah. I get to the scene. It was mass pandemonium, just Spanish household. There's a lot of grief. The family's there, people running around, the ambulance driver, I'll take the body. The sergeant standing with his thumb up his ass. Everybody's treating it like it's nothing. I'm saying, this doesn't look right. So I said, let me, get everybody out of here. I tell the detective to interview the husband. I want to take a look. So I said, show me the body. Let me see the scene. So I says, close the door. So there's nobody here. I look at the woman and I said, is that something's bothering? I got a gut feeling there's something wrong here. So I fold her eyelids back and I see the presence of petechial hemorrhage. Now, petechial hemorrhage is it's a presumptive evidence of a throttling or strangulation. The bottom line is I turned to the patrol sergeant and said, listen, Sergeant, we got a homicide here. Clear the street. His response was, who the fuck are you, Quincy? Because Quincy had the program. I said, no, I'm a detective, Sergeant. I see evidence. Anyway, to make a long story short, the husband's got the whole family surrounding him. I find out there's a 8-year-old in school across the street. So I know I can't go into a school and conduct an investigation. So I get a female relative from her side of the family, and we go over to the school. I tell the principal, a terrible tragedy has ensued here, and we need to make sure this little girl isn't traumatized because her mother's dead. So that gives me access to the kid. And she tells me a story, all right? The story basically counterpoints the husband's story, all right? So now we're going back, and thank God I brought some real detectives up to the scene. I meet them. It turns out the family took the 4-year-old away from the apartment. The 4-year-old was a witness. The 4-year-old saw daddy kill mommy. And in Spanish, the Spanish detective gets the story. Now we're ready for this guy. I get him into the interview room, right? I confront him. I said, oh, by the way, you stupid bastard, your 4-year-old daughter's testifying in the grand jury this afternoon. She saw what you did. Now, can 4-year-olds testify in the grand jury? Absolutely not. Can I say that they do? Absolutely yes. Why? Because I work for God. Secondly, Supreme Court decision Frazier versus Cup. You could use strategy in the interview. He confesses, and I got him. I wrote that thing up. I presented it at the homicide school. Well, you know how many times that case has been used on television, in different jurisdictions, and in books and in movies? So it's a classic case.
Vernon, you showed us something before we got on, and it says, we work for God. And it was something that you gave out at all your trainings. And so you said, you know who came through your classes because you'll see it on their desk. You'll see the "We Work for God" sign. Where did that come from? And what does that mean to you?
Well, years ago, when things were really bad, when things were bad in the street, and we were under attack, and I would, my background is a Catholic, altar boy, Catholic school, the whole systemary ruler, brother punching the head. I had all the rules. The only way I could explain it was that we're the good guys. We're working for God. They're the bad guys. And Romans 10:13 talks about how the police officers are working for God. And so I incorporated that into my writings and into my instruction. Also had an oath of practical homicide investigation. You'll find that hanging in different squad offices, that we are charged with the responsibility of bringing justice to the family. And if we're working for God, okay, and we're doing the right thing, all right, we represent the higher authority, which puts the defense counsel and the bad guys, they're working for the devil. So the "we work for God" is a kind of a nice, gentle expression. I'm not sending anybody to church. You don't have to go to church if you don't want. It's okay. But it kind of defines the mission of the homicide detective. And that's where that comes from.
That's super impressive. Your vast amount of knowledge. But what I love also is that you're actually citing Supreme Court cases, because that's something that I would teach my men and women, is actually understand Supreme Court cases and actually, assimilate it to actually police work that you're doing on a daily basis, because these cases really are the foundation of police work, far more than the patrol guy. That's more of administrative, but the actual police work itself is based on Supreme Court cases. So the fact that you're actually citing that, and I know that case is fantastic, and it really exemplifies, shows your vast knowledge. So with that being said, you talked about police officers being under attack. And obviously you're seeing what's going on now. Could you tell us some of the similarities you see from that time you're on the job? Obviously at the height of the 70s, where cops were under attack, you had BLA, which is similar to BLM, which is going on right now. Could you tell us some of the similarities that you see, and also some of the differences you see?
Well, I don't see similarities, because I'll tell you right now, if anybody dumped a bucket of water on me, they'd be wearing a freaking turban. All right. You don't touch a cop. For years, the rule was, you touch a cop, you get caught, it's going to hurt. There has to be consequences for bad behavior. When you have an idiot district attorney like Alvin Bragg, a Soros district attorney who's not prosecuting criminals but looking to prosecute cops, we're in deep trouble. The world's upside down. New York City, a major city, people wanted to come to New York City because it had so much to offer. Now you walk down the street, you get assaulted by a psycho, nothing happens to him. If you're like Penny, the Marines are good people. They're trained to protects the people in the subway, gets indicted by a district attorney who shouldn't be in office. But the governor won't get rid of it because she's afraid. She's afraid of that coalition. So who suffers? The people suffer. And the police. If I was a cop, it's quite apparent. Don't touch the bad guys. They're okay. And if you take action, you're going to get in trouble. At least when we had the Black Liberation Army, they knew, right? The cops were the good guys. They were the bad guys. And we got them. And we had some really outrageous shootings with these folks. And we had the backing. We were backed until the Harlem Mosque. When the Harlem Mosque took place, Ben Ward got involved along with one of the politicians. Next thing you know, they're releasing the people who killed Philly Cardillo. And that repeated itself for me in the Bronx with the Larry Davis case. Same crap. You cannot racialize police work. It's colorblind. You're a bad guy, they're the good guys. And there's no similarity. With the cops, the abuse that they're taking today, I wouldn't last 5 minutes because I'd give it to them right back. That's what they understand. They understand pain and they understand consequences. And that's what's missing.
Vernon, how do I personally think your generation, was a much different, honestly, a better generation, a tougher generation, a harder generation. I think obviously, there was a lot of society was different. So there's things that we believe that we're smarter on that maybe we're not. How do you believe your police department, the police department you work for, particularly the rank and file, sergeants like you, detectives like you, people who you worked around, how do you think they would handle in today's environment, particularly the unions, when it comes to the political environment and where we see there's zero prosecution? I know you seem very invested into your cases, and you've talked about it on here, how you've went back and forth with district attorneys. How do you believe you guys would fare in this? And do you think it would be any different if you guys were around today?
No, because we have been neutralized. What's happened to police work, it's been infiltrated by people who never should have been cops, who have been made commanders. All right? People who couldn't qualify to be police are now walking around with stars on their shoulders. I'm telling you right now, we are going to be destroyed from within, just like the Roman Empire. You cannot put nincompoops in charge of police operations, because if you do, what you're going to do, it's going to filter down. And the cops know, they're survivalists. They know if they can or cannot do something. And I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to put people out or embarrass anybody. But the truth of the matter is, most people are retiring because they know they can't stay here. Remember that movie Escape from New York? Well, these people are making Escape from New York a reality because it doesn't pay to be in New York because there's no prosecution. Alvin Bragg should be fired. The governor should go. The people who are in charge of the police department, not all of them, but some of them are only there because they're filling a certain category, a DEI category. DEI is dead, okay? Trump has been reelected, thank God. Maybe we can resurrect law enforcement.
First of all, your answer is fantastic because it's honest. I love your answer because it would have been easy for you to say, you know what? Yeah, our generation was better. We were more masculine. We were just better educated. We were smarter. We were tougher. But your answer was honest. And I think it's a fantastic question that John actually posed to you, because let's take the element that you had and bring it into today's society. How would you conduct yourselves? Well, it'd be pretty much impossible because right now the cops have actually no support from their leadership. They have no support from the justice system. They have no support from the media and the public. But what's really disturbing is the fact that they have no support from their leadership and their union. So internally, the police department's an epic fail. Now, you spoke about DEI, so that's great. I'd love to move you into that. Let's talk about DEI at this point. So was there any elements of DEI when you were on the job in the 60s and the 70s in comparison to now? Because we say it's an infection to law enforcement. Towards the end of my career, I said they don't hire just anyone. They hire a specific type of meek, timid, and docile. So was there any component of that while you were on the job, or they were hiring the most masculine traits to do the job in policing when you were on the job?
Well, when I was in the job, you had to be qualified. You had to pass the physical, you had to pass the educational, and you had to pass the test to get on the job to start off with. I saw this beginning back when, I think it was back in the 80s, I guess, when they all of a sudden they had the two lists, okay, of people come on the job. Now, I don't know what they were thinking about, but if you're going to hire people that weren't qualified to be police officers, what the hell did you think was going to happen when it came time for the sergeant's test? How would they pass the sergeant's test if they couldn't pass the police test? And then the lieutenant's test. And what they did, they bastardized civil service by coming up with a interactive basket and this and that and interviews. What that was all about, that was about DEI. All right. I originally, they told me I failed the lieutenant's test. I wrote a textbook. Okay. I failed the lieutenant's test. No, I was white. They had a certain amount. I didn't know how that worked until I was doing a program down in Florida. And the gentleman who brought me down, they told me he was one of the evaluators. And they were told there had to be a certain amount of blacks, a certain amount of Hispanics, a certain amount of females. That was DEI. That was the beginning of it. But they made a mistake when they failed me, because me and the deputy commissioner and the lawyer who they told failed, they said, oh, no, that was wrong. We didn't evaluate it right. And then I was promoted. So that was the beginning of DEI. So it was coming back there in the 80s. Then it became more radicalized. With the election of Obama as president, the great divider, he started his shit 2 weeks into his business with that Cambridge incident when he called the cops stupid. And it began, okay? Racial. Listen, I worked in a unit, 1/3 black, 1/3 Hispanic, 1/3 white. We were all brothers. We were all blue. We had none of that shit. There was no racial crap, all right? This started because Obama started, because he wanted to divide and conquer. Then they started promoting people who were like that. And it filters down. And that's wrong. That's wrong. You can't police on a color basis. It's got to be the crime. Now, look what's going on in New York City right now. I mean, it's terrible. The subway system, I wouldn't go on the subway system. And I'm a man. And I have a gun. But you know something? If I shot one of these bastards, guess who would indict me? Bragg. Terrible situation.
So Vernon, the woke generation came after you a little bit too. You know, you're world renowned as the lead expert on homicide investigations. You've been teaching everywhere, nationally, internationally. Trained the FBI. You trained the numerous law enforcement agencies throughout the world. Your training has touched people that have touched probably everyone who's dealing in homicide at this point in the world at this time. Can you tell us about what happened to you? Why, you said the woke generation came for you, and you're no longer teaching. You're no longer teaching these homicide investigations. What happened during that time?
Well, again, I was teaching all over the country, but I saw it started on the West Coast because they're kind of goofy out there in the West Coast. I'm sorry. But
that's why Eric.
That's why that's St. Andrea's fault.
Come visit me. One of our friends here, Stephen S. He's from the West Coast. We'll all get together, have a goofy time here.
Well, I'll give you an example. Every time I did a program, I started the program with a national anthem and a prayer. Why? Because we work for God and I want to set the tone. I began to get blowback out in Washington State. Why are you bringing a national anthem into the program? Why is there a prayer? This is not a prayer service. Oh, yeah? Well, it's part of the program. You don't want it, you don't get me. That's it. Oh, so, but it happened even in my time on the job. The Larry Davis case is a perfect example. Larry Davis shot 6 cops. Okay. He should have been apprehended by my fugitive squad. But my chief, Rotundo, didn't like what he called elitists. He wanted to keep it in a local squad level. You can't have local squads doing quick mobilization with emergency service and apprehending people. That's why I started a fugitive squad, so people wouldn't get hurt. They know the perp 24/7. They know his girlfriend. They know his hangouts. They know what's going on. So what happened is now, at the last minute, they try to put together something to grab Larry Davis, and 6 cops get shot. We never had 6 cops shot. Why? Because of incompetence. Now, what happens? The next day, Alpha Bravo tours for everybody. The chief of the department is going to personally handle the case. What are you, freaking kidding me? The chief of the department is going to handle the case? Now they put together this master plan, all right? We're going to apprehend Larry Davis, but we can't have any racial incidents or any harm happened to them. And so they put together this convoy of emergency service, detectives, representatives, and blah, blah, blah. And when Larry Davis is spotted, you notify command and control, and we send the convoy. Well, you can't drive down some of these streets in a Crown Vic without raising the neighborhood up. And they're coming in with a parade. They couldn't figure out why they couldn't catch him. This went on for 3 weeks. We became the laughing stock of the Eastern Seaboard. At one point, I had to go upstate to New York to pick up my son from college, and I see Larry Davis's picture on the toll booth. That dopey bastard wouldn't know how to get to the thruway. He's holed up in some crib in the Bronx of Manhattan. So I don't want to go into the whole detail of the story, but what I'll say to you is that on December 5th, 1986, I got a call from one of my detectives. They had him on the wire. He was back where he was the night of the homicide, a different location. All right? I committed commandercide that day. I had been ordered not to leave the command. They had a deputy inspector to watch me to make sure I didn't go out to the street. I ordered 38 black and Hispanic undercovers into the housing project on Webster Avenue with the following orders. Nobody out, nobody in. They want to go out, they can't go out. They want to come in, they can't come in. When you have that building shut down, I'll bring the white faces in. I put the notice for notification to the convoy to stand by. Took them 15 minutes to go 5 blocks. Why? Because the convoy had to be led by a super chief. We're the only department in the world that is arrogant enough to have the rank of super chief. 5 super chiefs, and they each had a code name. Patton, Custer, Halsey, Nimitz. Are you freaking kidding me? With an army helmet, no less. Now, I got my tit in the ringer on that one, but we had him. And it got bad for a while because everybody was yelling at me. And the chief of the department, I'll call him Robert Jones. Okay. He had a very, very sarcastic guy. He would like to call his different chiefs and inspectors, he would call them captain. That was the last rank to kind of traumatize him. So he says to me, so Vernon, are you a lieutenant or a lieutenant commander? I said, I'm whatever the frick you want me to be. But my people have them in the building. They're not your people, Vernon. They're my people. I said, then your people have them in the building. And so went back and forth. I'm getting beat up by these 3 chiefs. There was a housing lieutenant watching. He goes, Vernon was the funniest freaking thing you ever saw. These guys are screaming and yelling, and you're smiling at them. Okay? Well, the flogging stopped temporarily right after I told Custer, who was the chief of patrol, that I improvised, adapted, and overcame, that he is trapped in the building. So they stopped yelling at me because now we're going to find him. And later that evening, he was located in the 14th floor and he surrenders. But what really bothered the shit out of me is when he surrendered, they march him out from the building. The police commissioner, the chief, my detective, Andy Lugo, who's passed, God bless him, walking Larry Davis out through this phalanx of police officers looked like something out of a bad B-class movie. And people in the building yelling, Larry, Larry, Larry. I said, look at this shit. Here's a guy that's killing people in the community. He's a drug dealer and a thug, and they're worshiping him. And I got 6 cops in the hospital. Anyway, I knew my career was over because you don't poke the beast in the eye. I needed to get out of the job, and I did. That's another story for another time. But that was it.
You know, Vernon, I'd love to be Lieutenant Commander. You know, I love to.
I'm Vernon.
No, I love it. I love it. I just, when you say Lieutenant Commander, the way you wear it is it's really impressive. So you spoke about chiefs, right? And now we have so many super chiefs. There's so many different units that have been implemented and added to the NYPD as time evolved in comparison to when you were on the job. So with all these different units, there's so many chiefs right now. So it's interesting you talk about leadership, right? So I'm sure you followed the George Floyd riots, what was happening at the time and the aftermath of it. Could you tell me about any similarities between the chiefs you had then and now? In particular, we had some chiefs that actually took a knee during the George Floyd riots. What do you think about that? Would the chiefs that you had back then do the same thing now if they were in this environment?
Are you kidding me? Let me tell you something. The highest ranking people in the streets at the time were sergeants. You never saw a captain, right? Now we got them coming out the freaking window. It kind of, during the hearings, Pete Hegseth, who's now the Secretary of Defense, he mentioned during World War II we had 24 star generals. Now we got 44. Yeah, that's the new deal. We make all these people like bosses. They're not leaders. My job as a commander was to protect my troops. So when they would send a missile in from downtown to try to destroy the command, I'd intercept the missile so my cops could do the job. That was my position. And when you surround yourself with good people and you protect them, they make you look good. And that's what it's all about. It's about teamwork. It's about the relationship you have. And a real leader doesn't have to be called the boss all the time. All right. And when there's a decision has to be made, everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinion. It's not my way or the highway. Okay. It's what the group decides to do. And that's how it's supposed to be. But it's not like that anymore. And there are certain personalities you can't give them rank because it goes to their head. That's ridiculous.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Vernon, could you imagine? Let's go back to the 70s, right? The 70s was a volatile era. Could you imagine this in the 70s? Could you ever envision it? What did you think when you saw this? What came to mind? What comes to mind right now when you look at this picture?
What comes to my mind right now? Cowardice comes to my mind right now. You're a coward. You can't stand up, and you're doing that. You're the leaders, and you're down on your knee. I'd be in the middle of that place with a nightstick or a Coca-Cola straightening out the operation. In fact, I saw a good picture of you, Jim, with your uniform with your bat in the air. That's the way we handle stuff. And you want to know something? We were respected for it because they knew, again, bad behavior requires consequence. George Floyd was a thug, a drug addict. And believe me, as bad as that tape, the truth didn't come out about how bad he was. And what do? They got statues of this idiot. You got that stupid Biden who doesn't know what day it is, going to 3 funerals. This is not the way. This is not the way you treat a perp. We've lost our way. We've lost our morals. The conscience is apparently not operating very well. All right, the moral compass is really completely off. There's something pulling the needle the wrong way.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, this was a disgraceful time. I mean, I think it was disheartening to America. Not only just police work. I think it was disrespectful to masculinity across the nation. We actually had people at the details talking about taking knees. I was like, it's not happening. The only way I'm going to take knee is someone propping up my dead body. Like that's the only way it's happening. Is if I'm not there, my soul's not there. Because it's absolutely, utterly disgraceful. So let's bring you ahead. So the woke generation gets you, and so what's you have five different generations of your book that's used to train people across the world on how to operate on homicide investigations. What makes you write your new book, The Godfather of Homicide? What was your motivation behind that? What's that book about? A lot of people asking where to get copies, and just so everybody knows, in the links in all the places this is streaming right now, and for those of you that listen later on Apple, Spotify, and all that, there are links to buy both of Vernon's books in the show notes, as well as it shows which one is the new one, which is The Godfather of Homicide, which Vernon's going to tell us about now.
Well, I tell you what prompted me. I think it's part of because I'm older now. I'm looking back. I'm kind of disgusted with what's happened to my police department and other police departments as well, because I'm in contact with people across the country. It was basically that book, The Godfather. I never called myself The Godfather of Homicide. I'm not arrogant enough to do that. The news media called me The Godfather of Homicide because of all the cases that I was on television with. Every major serial murder case in this country, I opined about on national television, usually Fox News or some of the other ones as well, because I actually knew the case, because I had been consulted on the case by the people who had it. I was smart enough not to take credit for anything because it wasn't my case, but I could certainly talk about it. In fact, it was funny. The Long Island serial murder case, when it first became news, it was 2010. I think it was December 10th, 2010. I was on Fox News, and the reporter referred to me as, "You're the Godfather of Homicide." She said, "I never heard that before. That's pretty neat." Anyway, I had called it a serial murder case on that day, and the people in Nassau, Suffolk County, were having a heart attack. There was this Inspector Neubauer. What a jerk off he was. But there's no such thing as a serial murder. Blah, blah, blah. I said, "I'll tell you what, you don't want to call him a serial murder? I'll call him a serial murder. That's a dumping ground. You know how many people have a dumping ground? I can name 3 or 4. right? Everything I said turned out to be true because I studied this. This is what I did for a living. Okay. So I had this expertise, which I shared with everybody, but I never talked about it. So The Godfather of Homicide was basically to tell my life story for my grandkids. Okay. And for the family. I never intended to have this book to be a bestseller. And the Practical Homicide book is very expensive. No sense buying that book unless you're doing a homicide investigation. So The Godfather of Homicide was basically a project where I could talk about myself because I'm going to leave. It's like my book's in the 5th edition, the Practical Homicide book. I noticed during my research that most of the experts in the field end up with the 5th edition. I guess because we get too old or something happens. But the 5th edition is my final hurrah. But in between, I also published a book on sex-related homicide and death investigation, which is the protocol for all of the psychiatrists and psychologists that are investigating deviant sexual behavior. And how did that come about? Well, one day I was revising material because I always revised my books. It's not like in college when you go to college and you have to buy the book because the professor did a new paragraph and there's a new edition. No. I redid the whole book. I had so much material on sex-related events that were taking place in the country, especially with the internet, that I needed a separate vehicle. And so I produced Sex-Related Homicide and Death Investigation, Clinical and Practical Perspectives, because there was a lot of clinical in it because of the nature of human behavior, and the practical of how to determine and read crime scenes based on behavior in the scene. So I was constantly doing that. So that kept me ahead of the game, so to speak. But The Godfather of Homicide is my life story. That's basically what it boils down to.
I love it. You talk about perspective, right? So on this podcast, that's what we do. We give real perspective from real police with boots on the ground. So you talk about how you studied all this stuff. So I'd love to talk to you about a specific case. I want to get your thoughts on it. So when it comes down to the alleged killer, Luigi Mangione, that took the life of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, we've watched this case on television. This is a case that has been so prolific. So you watch this case also. I'm sure you watched the case also. I want to know your thoughts on how this case went as far as the investigation, the correlation with the other police departments, and how the upper echelon of the police department projected themselves and had to be involved personally. And leading up to the perp walk with Mayor Eric Adams, with Louis Mangione in a suit chained up, and this mass amount of cops around him, because John and I gave our perspective, and we gave our perspective how this completely taints a potential jury pool and how it really could hurt the case. So if you could give us your thoughts on what you saw and what comparison to how you would have ran that case, obviously, and what we see now, and what did you think about this perp walk with Eric Adams?
Well, before I get to the perp walk, you should know that I got called by the media on that case when it first happened. I properly profiled it. I said it wasn't a professional hit. It was an agenda-driven incident. I said it's personal for this person who did that. I also sincerely believe that this silly son of a bitch wanted to get caught because he wanted to make a statement. There's a lot going on psychologically with this fella. And as far as the perp walk, it was absolutely ridiculous. It was like people were jockeying to have their picture taken with the perp. That's not what we do, okay? And again, criticizing these people, they could care less if they get criticized because they're going to do what they want to do. But we don't do that. A perp walk, if it's going to be done, is simply with a guy walking from the jail into a police car and transport him. We don't pose and take pictures with him. But again, he was caught by civilians. Let's face it. All right. I mean, he's in a McDonald's, all right, having his breakfast. Same picture that's been on national television all over the place. Still has the same gun, and he has a memorandum in his pocket. Okay. You watch what this case is going to happen. There's going to be, you watch the defense when they get in there. They're going to, all the things you mentioned are going to come out, okay, as well as other stuff. And it's a damn shame because a life was lost, and and even the women, so the women that think he's handsome, it's like the Boston bomber. This little shit comes from a different country, puts a bomb. People are bombed and maimed, and oh, look how handsome he is. Isn't that nice? You know. Yeah, the world's upside down. I tell you, social media has a lot to do with this. Okay. And I can't say much more about that.
Vernon, what are you seeing about, we had some offline conversations and you seem pretty up to date on everything that's happening in New York City. What's your analysis of what's going on under this mayoral administration? Obviously, Eric Adams was a member of the NYPD. What are you seeing? What do you think? What do you think about the state of the NYPD currently? This is the first mayor in New York City history to have appointed 4 police commissioners in only one term. What are your thoughts around all this?
Well, my thoughts are not very, very nice. First of all, I don't think that Adams was ever a real police officer. He came into the police department from Reverend Herbert Doherty to undo the police department. He came in with a racial agenda. He didn't make many arrests. In fact, he's a racist. There's no doubt about it. During the O.J. Simpson case, which I was thoroughly involved with, I was on a TV program where Eric Adams was justifying the fact that O.J. Simpson was innocent and the police had conspired to arrest him. There was a shitload of evidence in that case. This is a domestic violence case. This wasn't nothing. This was horrible what happened. And he took the opposite position because he was so vested in his ethnicity, all right? And he was in the transit department, okay? And he would carry on about the racial antics of the police and this and that. So I was not surprised when he became the mayor that he was going to undo the police department, all right? And some of the people he's put in place, and again, I'm not going to mention names, okay? But they've already proven to be not only incompetent, but embarrassing to the NYPD. I'm embarrassed that my department has been brought down to this level of disgusting behavior and antics that we never even would have thought about when I was in the police department. That's all I want to say.
Vern, I love hearing you say that because we talk about that all the time. And I say that the NYPD was the GOAT of policing, right? Greatest of all time, most iconic police department in the entire world. And that's why we're doing this podcast, not because we hate the police department, not because we hate law enforcement, because we love it. And we want law enforcement, not just in the NYPD, but the entire country to be what it was, to what we know it was and what it could be, right? We should be evolving much further than where we are. So here we are. We now have 4 police commissioners under Eric Adams. We're possibly headed for a 5th. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing with this transition of police commissioners and how inept they are because they're under the leadership of Eric Adams in comparison to the leadership that you saw and the commissioners that you had back then? Can you make any similarities between the commissioners you had then and now? And if any differences in what you see?
Absolutely not. The police commissioners we had, although some of them weren't very good because they were liberals like Patrick Murphy, okay? The bottom line is the police commissioners that we had were police commissioners, and they ran the police department. Eric Adams is running the police department. That's the problem, all right? You got the things are mixed up. The lines of communication are very, very blurred. I don't think, well, I know what the answer is, but you're not going to see it. In fact, I hate to quote Obama because I think he stinks, but he once said, okay, elections have consequences. Yeah. The people of New York, if you keep electing the type of people that you're putting into the government, then expect your city to go down the tubes. Okay. Because that's where it's headed. And if you're gonna put handcuffs on the police because they can't do the job because of any kind of social ideas or promotion or DEI, right? You're gonna have to live with the consequences. Once again, if you don't correct bad behavior, it's like a toothache. If you have a toothache and you don't go to the dentist, next thing you're gonna have the tooth removed. All right? This stuff has to be nipped in the bud. There's a lot to be said about the broken windows theory. And I believe in that. Because when you had people jumping the turnstile at the subway, many times you found them with weapons and guns, okay, or drugs. All right, they're bad guys. But now they don't prosecute that. Now the MTA is losing money. So what they want to do, they want a congestion pricing for the once again, the citizens get screwed. These Democrats never met a tax they didn't like. It's crazy.
Vernon, what's your advice to anybody looking to come on the job? We got a lot of people on here that want to be cops, that often asking about the NYPD or law enforcement or other law enforcement agencies. What's your advice to someone looking to come on the job? What's your advice to those that are on the job?
Those that are on the job, protect yourself. Those who want to come on the job, you better wait a little bit and hope that there's a change in administration. A lot of people who have the desire to become law enforcement, you might want to consider going to another agency where they have dignity, where you can be the police. Okay. And whether that's the federal government, which I don't have much respect for the FBI, to tell you the truth. I mean, but that outfit has really gone down the tubes. I hope they can change that. But right now, the NYPD is not the place to be if you want to be a police officer. I'm sad. I'm sad that I have to say that, because I have personal reasons, that I don't want to say that. But God bless.
No, thank you so much for saying God bless them. Right. With that being said, we're seeing right now the morale is just is as low as it could be right now, and I know that morale, it does have its waves and it has its pendulum, and the camaraderie has to always be there though, despite morale where it goes up and down. So with that being said, we're having an epidemic of suicides in the police department, and we always talk about mental health. It's one thing we talk about mental health. So when you were on the job, what was the internal pressures of the job like, and how did you handle it back then? And the department as far as mental health in comparison to now, because it's unfortunate, but we have so many cops that have taken their own lives. And, John and I talk about this all the time, and we think it's the internal pressures of the NYPD, not the external pressures. Yes, the justice system is failing. The justice system was failing in the 70s. So there obviously is something going on internally. What do you think that's going on that's creating this epidemic? And do you think that what was going on with mental health when you were on the job compared to now? And what could we do? Do you have any thoughts on that? What can we do as far as mental health so we don't have cops taking their own lives?
Well, I'll tell you something. We didn't really have that much for police officers that were under stress at the time. Today, we have organizations, all right, to help police officers to cope with the pressures of the job. But a lot of the pressures of the job are internalized because of other conditions, all right, personal conditions. If people are drinking, okay, or God forbid they're taking drugs, it exacerbates the tensions of being a police officer. But I think the added pressure on the police to basically stay there like scarecrows and not take action when they should be taking action has an effect on the person. I know I would be very frustrated if I was not allowed to do my job. Now, years ago, when we had, you should call them psychos. Now they're emotional disturbed persons. Okay, we had we psychoed them. Okay, and they went to Bellevue and they were held for a while. Now they do these quick evaluations, put them right back out. Let me tell you something. People who have mental conditions that make them dangerous need to be in a constricted, controlled environment. You cannot let them out. Don't give me this shit about this. They have their rights to be to walk around. No. If they're talking to Martians and having intergalactic conversations, okay, they're going to forget to take their medication because they're very important intergalactic conversation. In a controlled environment, they're getting the medication, they watch them take it, and they keep them there. That's what we need. We got to bring back institutions. You don't want to call it a jail, call it a hospital. Okay, call whatever you want to call it, but they don't belong in the subway system. They don't belong in the street. Okay, they can't be out there. That's my solution. I'm sorry.
So, Vernon, we have a pretty sad tradition every time we have a retired member of service on. We always ask them the same two questions. We always get the same two answers. We're hoping that someday some politician is going to wake up and see that there is a huge issue, what's going on with it in this administration and in this whole anti-police rhetoric that's been happening, and all of the insanity that's happening around really making it a criminal-centric society as opposed to a victim-centric society. So we always ask retired members of the service that come on here, and we've had hundreds. We ask them the same two questions. At the time you came on the police department, being a young man, would you make that same decision again? If you could go back in time, would you do your job again the way you did it? Would you change anything at the time? And we follow that question by, if you were a young man now, would you come on the NYPD now?
No, I wouldn't change a thing I did. I was very proud of my service. I'm still proud of my service. I'll tell you, what's going on with this community thing. They're misreading the community. The people in these inner cities want the police there. They love the police because it allows them to go to the store without getting molested. It's the idiots that put themselves in charge of these positions and claim to know what the people want. No, they want law enforcement. They want the cops there. They respect you. It's people like the city council, the city of New York. They're all goddamn communists. All right, they're going to hell in a handbasket. They're not representing the community. You remember when Donald Trump went to the South Bronx? Did you see the response of those people from the neighborhoods? They were happy to see him because he heard them. He heard what they were saying. These other idiots, they're in their own little toxic bubble. Okay. Would I come on the job today? No. Knowing what I know, it's the risk isn't worth it. Okay. At least I knew what I was getting into. I knew a possibility I could get killed in the line of duty. I mean, you don't think like that because you would never take action. But when I took action, I knew I was going to be backed up. That chase through the streets of Little Italy, that was, you would never see that today. Oh, no. Are you kidding? So, listen, my answer is I feel bad because I love the NYPD. It's in my blood, okay? It's in my family's blood. But,
John, we're batting 1,000 here. You know, right now we've had numerous interviews with former chiefs, yourself, Lieutenant Commander. And right now, no one has said they would take the job at this time. And I can tell you right now, I wouldn't either. And neither would John. And it clearly makes sense. I want to thank you. You talk about broken windows, which I refer to intrusive police work, Supreme Court cases, you self-read, 2 master's degrees, you delivered papers, lifeguard. You have so much experience and so much vast knowledge in your head. But one thing I want to thank you is you're so humble about it. You have every right to be confident and cocky, and you're not. You're so humble about it with the amount of experience you have, and that really speaks volumes to who you are. You're someone that we need to be police commissioner or one of these deputy commissioners right now because you have the competence to be confident and be humble at the same time because you secure yourself. And that's what I talk about with this inept leadership right now is they're egotistical because they're insecure. They don't have the knowledge you have and the experience you have. You don't have to say, just like you said earlier, I always say, I'm the boss. People knew you were the boss, and you could tell that, right?
If you ever tell people you're the boss, you're not the boss. Sorry.
I want to thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. I got to tell you this. Please plug your book. Tell people, I know you're not really on social media, how they can get in touch with you. I will, you're welcome to come on this podcast anytime, but please plug your book. Thank you so much. You're so candid and humble. You're super cool. I don't know if you smoke cigars. I'd love to have a cigar with you. You got a lot of fans here on the podcast. So please tell us about your book.
Well, listen, you go to my website, www.practicalhomicide.com. My life's an open book. And no, I don't have to brag about anything because I know better. I was fortunate to make good associations. I always recognized folks. I always cited my sources. I always respected other people. Okay. And you treat people the way you want to be treated, everything's cool. And I have that website not to promote myself, but to promote the materials. There's a section on there that talks about research materials, current events, and things that you can use if you're a police officer. That's advertised in my book, which it's on the front page. But if you scroll down, you'll see that you can go to the main site. And one of the things I did a few years ago is I wrote this article, The 7 Major Mistakes in Suicide Investigation. Do you realize that article has been downloaded so many times and has showed up so many other times? You just scroll something I wasn't going to talk about, but since you have it up there, I have 2 grandsons in the business, okay? And that's why I'm very cautious about talking. The one boy, the oldest boy on the left, he's carrying the same detective shield that his dad and his grandfather carried. The other guy's in a conditions car. They're both in the South Bronx, and they're really good cops. But I know in my heart of hearts that they're a risk, and that's what I'm concerned about. I bet you I do a lot of praying. Okay, I always did, but I got 2 grandsons there, so that's the blue blood family. Since you brought it up, I wasn't going to talk about it, but yeah, we're the blue bloods. And if I was the blue blood guy, I'd take better care of them. I'd make sure they got better details.
Yeah, well, that's completely understandable. But I mean, it seems they worked their way up too. So, they weren't handed anything. Obviously, you said it. A lot of people weren't too happy with your service, and they although you performed the vital service, you spoke out and you led from the front, not from behind, and you protected your troops, and a lot of people don't like that. You said something to me the other day when I spoke to you, and I keep thinking about it, and it's sitting with me. And you said to me, what happens is at some point in your career, you get too good and you get too smart, and then it's time to go.
Yeah, you'll become your own enemy, because when you know better and you see the mistakes being made and you speak up, and if you don't have the right rank, your voice is not the voice they want to hear. And it's the voice of truth. It's the voice of common sense. And it used to frustrate me, because every time a senior police officer, a good cop, detective, boss would walk out the job, every time he or she walked out the job, out walked a walking, talking crime computer that's not replicated in anything in headquarters, because it's up here, and you're losing that. And I tried to tap into that when I was doing the books, tap into the senior people, get their opinion, their knowledge, because we're going to hold on to it. And I repackage it. I didn't invent anything. Okay.
Vernon, what you said, amen to that. Let me tell you, because that is so true. John left the job. I left the job. We have Sal Greco wrongfully terminated. Marlon Bethel. I mean, we talk Marlon Bethel right now is so analytical. He's part of the Feinstein family, pulling up so much data for John and myself and Sal to really get the research for this podcast. John left with massive leadership experience, different aspects of the job. I myself coined as the most complete cop, how to leave the job. So it's unfortunate. Sal Greco wrongfully terminated. We lost, and all these cops from the mandate. We lost these veteran cops with all that knowledge that you talk about, and they're trying to just replace them with bodies and change it to this DI movement. And it's really changed. You can see it's just changed the whole nomenclature of the job. So that's why I said we need people like you at the top. Would you be interested if it was ever offered to you to be in leadership of the NYPD?
I got to be honest. We need young men. Okay. I'm an old guy. How did Clint Eastwood put it? I love Clint Eastwood. A man's got to know his limitations. All right. I'm 80 something years age. You got to have somebody who's 24/7. You want another Biden in charge of the operation? No, I want a Trump. Yeah, young people with the energy to do it. Do I have the knowledge? Yeah, but do I have the physical capabilities and mental capabilities? No. So I know my position. Thank you.
Well, I'll say, yeah, we need somebody like you, at least to be an advisor, right? With your experience, because you could look at this, right? And you look at the 70s, the 60s, how it morphed into the 70s is very similar of how it morphed now of where we are in comparison to the Giuliani era. So we could see it. There's a lot of similarities and a lot of comparisons, but unfortunately right now, what has changed even more is not just policy and rules, but law has changed. So I think that's where it's really creating and really tipping on its head. So I want to thank you so much for being here. You're awesome, by the way. Super cool. You tell me that you don't have the marbles right now. You got your wits about you. So you definitely can tell you take care of yourself. You're strong, great mind. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak to you. It's talking to fellow cops.
we love to have you back on. Maybe we could do something with Ralph and Randy, and we could all do like a little round table and get your thoughts on some issues, anything that goes on, or maybe any issues that pop up, maybe nationally. We don't have to focus on New York City. But before we let you go, you spoke a lot about your faith. I love your hook. We work for God. You already said it here that you believe that was your vocation, that was your calling from God. Could you just let us know how your relationship with God and your faith has walked you through your career and even what you're continuing to do now?
Well, it gives me the confidence that I can express myself. A lot of people don't like to express their religious feelings. I have no problem doing that. But I would tell you that we need religion in our lives. I married my childhood sweetheart. We're married 60 years. We've been together 64 years.
God bless you.
Well, God bless her. In my mind, she's up for beatification. That's the step before sainthood. Because anybody could stay with me for 60 years has got to be a saint. And the truth of the matter is, you need that in your life. You need to have religion. You need to have a higher authority. Okay, because when you don't have a higher authority, then you're going to do stupid stuff. Okay, it's the bottom line. People screw up. All right, listen, I'm in the people business. All right, but I look at all my education and stuff, and some of the things I've seen. We need to have an understanding that there is a greater authority that we're responsible to ourselves. And I have no problem talking about we work for God. And I think it's an important concept.
Well, Vernon, this has been an amazing show. I'm telling you, you got so much support here right now on our chat. People that know you, there's people here that said they've been to some of your seminars throughout the entire country. So before we go, I just want to have a little fun. Can you tell us a little bit about you outside the job? Hobbies you're into, maybe stuff you do with your sons outside the job, movies you're into. Just tell us a little bit about you outside the police department.
Yeah, I'm a retiree. I read books, and I go to the beach, and I relax. And me and my wife go to some shows, and I'm trying to make up for lost time, but you can't make up for lost time. Every day is a blessing. Okay, so try to live it to the fullest each day. But the truth of the matter is, we took a lot away from our families in police service. We missed holidays, we missed birthdays, we missed special occasions, and sometimes we came home in a bad place. Okay, being able to work that out is so important. And now that I'm retired and I still got my girl, we can enjoy life. Okay.
Vernon, we've got one more question for you coming in from the audience. What's your secret to 60-year marriage?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. I'm no longer the commanding officer. What can I tell you? I used to be in charge of 5 sergeants and 50 detectives. Now I'm the grunt. she's the lieutenant commander.
We all know that. That's actually a great question. But you know what, Vernon, thank you so much for being here. Outstanding. This is Lieutenant Commander, retired Vernon Geberth. Say his name right. You are the Godfather of Homicide. I can't ask you. I tell you right now, you can't ask for a cooler nickname. So clearly shows who you are. Thank you so much, and I'm glad you're here. And I'd love to have you, like you said, John said, with Randy Jergensen, Ralph Freeman. Well, come on anytime. You're welcome here. The podcast, our listeners, our friends, they love you. I mean, and I can see why. Thank you.
Whoever out there, I love you too. Okay, it's good to see you. I'm still around. Okay, God bless.
Vernon, last question for you. People are asking how they could contact you and how they could get signed copies of your book.
Well, that requires people to mail things and mail things back, and that's expensive. I don't want anybody, doing that. It's not necessary. But if you really want a signature, you can send it to my post office box 105, Marco Island, Florida 34146. And if you want to pay for the postage, that's great. But you don't have to do that. My thing, I'd rather send me a letter and I'll sign a piece of paper. You can stick it in the book. It's cheaper. I guess life's too short. Everything's expensive. But no, thank you.
And everybody's saying that you should be on social media. Vernon said he's on Facebook. Is that right? What's your Facebook handle right now?
On Facebook. That's it. What am I going to tell you? I have no handle. It's just Vernon Geberth Facebook.
Yeah.
I have a practical homicide Facebook, but I don't do much with that. There's a couple of different organizations, but I never got on X or Instagram or anything because it must be my age. I don't know. But when I finish this, I'll look into Instagram and try to figure that out.
We're going to get you on. We're going to get you a handle. So Vernon Geberth, Lieutenant Commander, retired NYPD. You were the GOAT of homicide. You still are. You know what? People reach out to him. Thank you so much for being here. We'll have you again. Any last words?
God bless America and God bless the NYPD.
Thank you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.